Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and
I'm Mike Rice.
And today we have a very special episode for you all today. Because match week 13 is a little bit weird and some matches are played in the midweek and some matches are played earlier on, we decided to save the match week 13 recap for later in the week. Instead, for today, what we have is a little bit of a Canada Day special for you, a little bit of a fun episode, where we're talking about the top 10 Canadian CPL players of all time. Now, it's a very difficult subject to broach, Mike, but what we've done is that we have asked a bunch of friends of the show and contributors that have helped us with zines in the past to send in their lists of top 10 Canadian CPL players. And what we've done is we've taken all the lists, including ourselves, and compiled them and weighted them depending on the positions that we have put each player. So basically what that means is, let's say you have player A, and I put player A in 10th position. That means that they get 1 point. Now, Mike, if you put player A in 8th position, well, that means they get 3 points. And if we have both, let's say, player B in 1st position, well, they get the maximum points we can give them, which is 10. Now, after we go through each of the lists, we've compiled them together, we weighted them, it's come out to be a pretty big list considering it's 8 people. Of 22 players split into 16 positions, all according to the weight of how many points they accrued throughout all 8 of the lists. Now, I have the master list here. Mike, you do not, so we're going to see your genuine reactions with this.
Yep.
And we're going to go through rather quickly on the lower ones, the ones that maybe only have 1 point, 2 point, 4 points, and then obviously dive deeper into maybe the top 13, 12, 10, especially the top 5. And then give our reactions and what we think, and maybe we'll talk about some stats and appearances and awards and all that fun stuff. I think this is a really good, discussion to have. This is an idea borrowed by a podcast that I watch called SDS, which is a British podcast that mostly talks about Premier League, but also world football. So credit to them for this really cool idea. But I am very, 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 very excited, Mike, to dive into this. I know you are too. But before we do, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name to see the visual side of the podcast. So, Mike, we have a lot of players to go through for this. We have 22 players split between 19 places. So a few ties, but since it's a lot of players, we are going to have to go through this relatively quickly to make sure that it's at a decent length. Before we actually go through the players, though, I should mention who contributed to the list. So obviously, Mike and myself have contributed. Alex Gonge-Ruzik from One Soccer contributed. Thomas Hewitt from Canadian Soccer Daily. Brandon Q from Canucks Abroad. Scott Strasser, who writes for Cavalry and is based out of Calgary. Kevin Anderson, the massive Forge fan who's helped us out a couple times with the zine. And Michael McCall from AFTN. So a nice mix of different writers from across Canada. I wish we could have had some Halifax writers, but they get back to me in time.
Yeah, that's a shame.
But, I mean, granted, we already have 22 players to go through in 19 places. So it's quite a lot. Now, in 19th place, so with 1 point, are 2 players tied. And those are Fraser Aird and Brian Wright. So Fraser Aird was 10th, aka 1 point, for Thomas Hewitt. And Brian Wright was 10th, aka 1 point, for Michael McCall. Now, quickly talking about these 2 players, you know how much I love Fraser Aird.
I would have thought I'd have been you that I'd have been 10th, to be honest.
You know what? I saw that list and I thought, it's a great shout. And I do think that he deserves praise enough to be there. But I was just thinking of players that had a bit more legacy to them. Obviously, the CPL is only 7 years old, but in its time, we've been able to see players be part of dynasties, be part of fantastic super teams and stuff like that. And while I do think Fraser Aird is 100% one of the best fullbacks the league has seen, I don't think for me he has done enough to warrant that top 10 place. And I think sort of the same can be for Brian Wright. You know, I don't know if that one vote comes off of the hat trick that he pulled off, the week before. But I think he is, like he's shown, he can be a decent striker at times. But I don't think it's enough for me to think he's top 10 Canadian player of all time.
No, I think Brian Wright's like a good CPL player that frustrates because he could be better at times. And Fraser Aird will probably win some awards on deep crossing delivery technique or something like that. So a good player again, but for me, there's more than 9 other Canadians that are better than him, unfortunately.
That's very
in my
fair.
eyes.
That's very fair. So I'll go through 18th, 17th, and 16th, so we can just start to power through some of these lower ones.
Yeah.
So in 18th place by himself is Kwasi Poku, who Michael McCall put him in 9th with 2 points. Then in 17th, we have Callum Irving with 3 points. That was yourself who placed him in 8th. And then in 16th, we actually have Woobens Passius, who was put 7th with 4 points by Brandon Q. Now, Poku, Irving, and Passius, very different players. Poku and Passius, similar in the sense that they kind of broke out at Forge as strikers, scored a bunch of goals, and then got whisked up and sold to other teams. I personally think that Passius probably has a bit of a better case to be in the top 10 than Poku, just because he was around for a little bit longer and was scoring a bunch of goals for a little bit longer. But Poku, I mean, he had a fantastic season last season and earned the move to Belgium, got the national team call up and featured for them. It's understandable that he can be in these kind of conversations. I think Callum Irving for sure. I'm kind of sad again. I didn't put Callum Irving in. I had a couple other keepers that I was thinking might be just ahead of him in the list. And as with all kind of lists and rankings that you make, goalkeepers and defenders are always kind of the ones that are forgotten about. It's always the attackers and the midfielders that seem to get the attention. So I'm a little sad to see Callum Irving so low, but I think I agree that he definitely should be talked about because of the heroics he had with Pacific and then the standout performances he's had with Vancouver, which I'm sure you can attest to.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had him in there. He's been fantastic. Canadian Premier League winner. The 4th most clean sheets of any goalkeeper in the CPL, which is good. There's 3 other Canadians ahead of him, but they didn't play for Vancouver for 2 years. So the work he's done there, when he's been given a lot more work than a lot of other goalkeepers have to deal with, I thought, he really did deserve to be on the list for me. And interestingly, when I first started up the list, I filled it with goalies. I felt like I was starting to fill out with goalies. I was like, I need to actually share this around and bring in some of the players because we've got so many good Canadian goalkeepers in this league.
That was very fair. Yeah, I mean, he like you said, the fact that he plays in Vancouver and he is the captain there probably hurts it a bit, even though that's where we've seen probably the best kind of standalone performances that we've seen. But I think going back to like Kwasi Poku and Woobens Passius, Kwasi Poku, he played 70 games for Forge, but really where he stood out was in last season where he played 13, where he scored 13 goals, or he scored 8 of his total 13 goals and 2 assists in just 17 matches, obviously warranting that move abroad. So you can sort of see that the list is going to comprise of obviously looking at some stats that they have, but overall consistency, legacy, big moments. That's what makes lists like these a lot of fun. So I'm hoping that we get to see a bit more variety, and we will see a bit more variety in the coming places. But now for 15th, 14th, and 13th place, we have a tie for 14th place. So 15th, we have Sam Salter, and he's the first player to appear on 2 lists. He was 8th for Kevin Anderson, so he got 3 points. And he was 9th for Scott Strasser, getting 2 points, meaning he had 5. I think Sam Salter, especially lately, he's been playing quite well for
Yeah.
Ottawa. He's sometimes had a bit patchy form in his career, but when he's on it, he likes to score a bunch of goals, and he seems to always be in and around the scoring charts. Especially with Ottawa now, he's been able to be a bit more consistent in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. I think in a year, like maybe 2 years' time, if we do the same list again, if he continues the form he's on this season, he'll be a shoo-in for everyone's list. It's just it's taken him. He's sort of outshone at times with Del Campo last year, and this year he just seems to have started to find what Ottawa were paid the money for, really, isn't it? Like, they went out and they found him, they wanted to get him from Halifax, they stumped up the money for him, and he's starting to pay that back. And I think just he obviously 4 goals against Valor's big record, like most goals in one game. It's all coming this year, I think, and for me that's why I personally left him off, but I can see why others popped him straight in there. I mean, 42 goals already in the CPL is an impressive tally.
Exactly. I think that when you have a player like that, and if he continues to go into that kind of form, like you said, and maybe he will climb up the charts and maybe usurp some of the other players that have played a little bit longer and a little bit better than him in a few years. But we do have a tie in 14th, and actually we do have a tie in 13th. So this is where we have a couple more ties.
Okay.
A tie in 14th with 6 points. We have 2 wingbacks, actually. Mateo Debrien, who got straight 6 points by being placed 5th by Kevin Anderson, and Mo Farsi, who was also same thing, got 6 straight points by being placed 5th by Michael McCall. Now, 2 wingbacks, one very much more recent, another one kind of in the early days of the CPL. But I think both are pretty good shouts because of what they've been able to do after the CPL. Mo Farsi, genuinely, when I was thinking about it, is kind of a sleeper pick because you see what he's been able to do after leaving the CPL. He's won the MLS Cup with Columbus Crew. He's gone on and had success, and he actually, he's not just like a bit player. Like, he's played under William Nancy, and he's played well. He's really evolved into a standard MLS player, which is kind of what you want as your realistic kind of thing, a goal getting out of the CPL. So, that's actually, I think, a really, really good pick. And obviously, Mateo Debrien, he had a fantastic season for Valor. He had it was still a pretty good season for Ottawa the year afterwards, last season, and then made his move to Europe. So I can understand how Mateo is involved, but I think Mo Farsi is definitely a surprise pick, but a solid pick to be chosen in the top 10.
Definitely agree. I've struggled over Debrien whether to pop him in or not, and ended up leaving him out. But it's an excellent player, and Farsi, it's these ones are always fun because it's always how the person's interpreted it. They could have just didn't have a long period of time in the CPL, but was a great player and has gone on and got better and better as his career's continued so far. So really cool pick, that one.
Yeah, especially since I'm pretty sure those are the only 2 wingbacks / fullbacks in the list. So I'm glad that we got those positions got a little bit of love in the list so far. But now moving on to 13th place, we have 2 heavy hitters. Now is where we're starting to get into a bit more heavy hitters with the list right now. We have on both at 8 points, David Chouanier and Ali Musi. Now, David Chouanier got placed 5th on Scott Strasser's list, so he got 6 points. And then he got 2 points, or 1 point each for the extra 2 points by being 10th on Alex Gonge-Ruzit's list and on my list as well. He was 10th for me. Well, Ali Musi got 10th for Kevin Anderson. He got 4th, I think, our highest position so far given, by Scott Strasser, obviously the Cavalry fan. Going to give him some points there. So it's combined to be 8 points in total. Both players have had some pretty stellar careers in the CPL. I mean, David Chouanier has been a day one for Forge. And I think one of the biggest reasons why he doesn't actually crack the top 10 is because of his injuries and of consistency. Because we saw he had some really good periods. I think it was last year at the start of the season, or was it the year before? I forget. No, I think it was last year that him and Borges were just like trading
flying.
goals.
Yeah.
Just both of them flying, scoring goals for fun. And when he's fit and he's ready and he's sharp, he can be one of the most exciting and dangerous and prolific wingers in the CPL. The only issue, of course, with him and his story is that he's had a bunch of injuries and consistency issues throughout. But nevertheless, he's won everything with Forge so far and definitely deserves his place in these lists. Same you can say with Ali Musi. I mean, Ali Musi, not as long in terms of his impact as David Chouanier, but is one of the most talented wingers in the league. And he has been able to really turn it on for Cavalry in the last 2-3 seasons and establish himself as one of the best players in the league. And I think when you have a talent like Ali Musi and you know how to harness it, he can definitely take you to go win titles, as he has helped with Cavalry in the last couple of years.
Yeah, two really fun players in their own little ways. It's a shame for Chouanier, the amount of injuries he's had. But the two players I really struggled to find a spot for. I was really looking to get them in, but I was really struggling to take other players out. So I can definitely see why people have got them on the list. Sure, where everyone can, just by watching some of the games they've been involved in, where they've really lit up a match. It's great to see.
Exactly. I mean, there's a reason why, they're still around. I mean, Ali Musi won Players Player of the Year in 2023. He had a spectacular year that season. And David Chouanier, even though he hasn't won any individual awards, he has 4 rings with Forge. And he's played maybe not a massive part in all of them, but enough of a part to warrant him, getting the rings. And you always hear about his presence and his leadership being such a, established player in that Forge side that I think he deserves his flowers, even if he hasn't been able to show as much as he would have liked. Now we're going to move on to 12th place. Now from here on out, Mike, from 12 to 1, we have no more ties. It is just straight players. And we'll take a little bit more time to discuss some of these players because it does feel like these are now where it gets a little quite contentious. We're still kind of in and around these lower points, but you'll see once we start to get to top 5, the points start to jump as we get to the top players. But in 11th, in 12th place, we have Marco Bustos with 11 points. So only 3 people had him on his list. Thomas Hewitt had him in 8th, so he got 3 points. Gange Ruzik, Alex, put him in 5th, so he got 6 points. And I put him in 9th, so he got 2 points. Marco Bustos only just came back to the league after leaving, so we are only starting to see him again just now. But when you talk about that, 2021 Pacific run, where you really look at that team, so many CPL stars were part of that team. That's probably one of the best CPL teams we've seen, case in point. He was a huge star in that as well. Everyone obviously talks about Alejandro Diaz and the goals that he scored there. But Marco Bustos, as a creator and as a scorer, was incredible. Dealt with his own fair share of injuries that kind of maybe hampered his legacy a bit, but still fantastic player, fun player to watch. And even this season with Pacific, they've struggled scoring goals up until this past weekend. They've been struggling scoring goals, but when they do, he's been a large part of them. So I still think he has it in his locker to be a really, really influential player.
Yeah, so exciting to watch. And like I said, I gave Callum Irving that shot earlier on my list for that season. And Marcus Bustos was incredible. Third highest assist provider in the league with 20. He's just been a class act, and a few years away from the league and now back. It's you can see why Pacific was so desperate to get him and how important he is being back there to the team, and see how well he can help try and sort of change their fortunes somewhat this year.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tall order for him, but if anyone on the team is going to be able to do it, I do think it's him. And it's always nice to see him as well, because he's obviously a Whitecaps sort of academy product. He was in WFC2 before he made his move to Valor and to Pacific. I think he is a player that when you look back on it, I think people will respect him a bit more. But because he kind of took a step away, went to Sweden, maybe they're not quite as aware. But yeah, I definitely think he's a top player and deserves to be very close in 12th, very close to cracking the top 10 list. In 11th place, we have a defender that we talked about recently in terms of rumors, in terms of potentially making the CPL return, but in the end did not. And that is Dominik Zator, who is now playing in Poland and will continue to play in Poland after signing a contract with a newly promoted side that I will not try to say the name of. Again, you can Google it if you're really, really curious. But he got 12 points. He got 5 points by placing 6th in Michael McCall's list, and he got 7 points by placing 4th in your list. Again, one of the highest ones we have so far. I'm curious, what made you put Dominik Zator so high up on your list?
I think it's just an absolute quality defender who's gone on to do great things afterwards. But for those opening years, like the quality that he had on the ball, as well as and dealing with things in the air and his tackling, the way that he was able to get the ball out and get attacks going as well. Just a fantastic all-round defender. And to come out of those, I mean, we've said the same for players like Bustos that we just mentioned there, who have done something great in those early stages and then gone on to do big things. Zator was the one that I went with to go into that list, and it's just proven how good a player he was with the success he's had going forward.
That's fair. I mean, he is a Canadian national team, player. He's played 3 times for Canada. He did go, he's got Polish heritage, so he went to Poland to play for Korona Kielce. I think that's how you say it. But he is a fantastic player. He was nominated for Defender of the Year, I think, in 2019, I think it was. And he was great then. He continues to just grow and grow and grow. Another Whitecaps FC2 product, though also Calgary Foothills. But I'll claim the Whitecaps part of him. And it just, like you said, mentioned, just a really, really strong defender. He's only 30. Feels like he's been around for forever. He's only 30 years old. And I'm excited to see what he does with his new side in Poland. Again, I'm not going to try to name it, but it's going to be a big test for him. So hopefully it all goes well. But that is all of the players outside of the top 10, Mike. Now we're getting to the meat of the episode. We're going to talk about the proper top 10. And in 10th place, we have one of the 2 keepers in the top 10. And that is Tristan Henry. He is in 10th, just 1 point ahead of Dominik Zator with 13 points. And three people have placed him on their list. Michael McCall has put Tristan Henry in 8th, so he gets 3 points. Brendan Q put him in 9th, so he has 2 points. Where he gets the majority of his points is from, of course, the Forge fan, Evan Anderson. Put him 3rd overall. That is right now our highest in the list. And I think it will be for some time the highest in the list. And so on 13 points, he is the first player into the top 10. Now, you can't deny that Tristan is a spectacular player and has
Mm.
been for Forge quite some time. Obviously, his exit was a bit
Acrimonious.
unceremonious, yeah, with all of the drama. But still, regardless, he is a legend, I think, for
Mm.
Forge. He was him and the other keeper that we'll mention later on kind of really established themselves as like the two best keepers. They kind of set the standard
Yeah.
for what it is to be a top keeper in the CPL from very early on. And obviously, at the beginning of the CPL, the quality was what it was because it was the first year. But even as the quality improved, the fantastic part about them is that so did they.
Mm.
And they kept continuing to push each other. They continued to raise the level. And for Tristan Henry, he made some spectacular saves. He
Yeah.
had some games that were just 10 out of 10s where it was just he's the reason that kept, Forge in a lot of the matches. And he played 142 games for Forge and kept 51 clean sheets. For a team that was just starting and was just beginning in their legacy, a lot of the first couple of years Forge were the strongest team, but we're still figuring themselves out. He was there, he was a anchor, and yes, the way that he left was a sour note for him and
Mm.
the club and everybody around. But I think it's safe to say that he is definitely one of the best keepers that the league has seen, and just one of the best kind of leaders as well that we've seen in the league as well.
Yeah, he's one of those ones that is going to have a lot of clips on the highlight reel of some saves where you just think, how on earth did he do that? Like, there was absolute quality at times. The odd mistake here and there, but the quality of some of his saves is just outstanding.
Yeah, just a really, really good player. Really nice guy too. I remember when I worked for at Forge, the kind of character that he was. He was just a really nice guy overall, and
Mm.
yeah, I think very, very safe choice to be in the top 10. In ninth place, we have a defender on 15 points, so just 2 points ahead of Tristan Henry, and that is Thomas Mayer Guiger, TMG, on 15 points. He got 5 points from Kevin Anderson, putting him in sixth. He got 2 points from Thomas Hewitt, putting him in ninth, and then 4 points each for Alex's and your list by putting
Yeah.
them in seventh place. I didn't put him in my list, so I'll let you chat about TMG and why do you think he deserves to be relatively high in your top 10 list?
Yeah, Pacific have had this fantastic defense while he was there, and a lot of the praise was given to Amir Didic. The partnership they had was incredible, and I think we're seeing this year, when he's able to lead this Halifax team, we're seeing just how much we've maybe taken for granted of what he did at Pacific, because he's a fantastic leader, a great defender, and he's always been a bit of a danger in the box, despite not having the size of Amir Didic. He's been just as good getting forward and causing problems in the opposition's box. Just an all-round, just top quality player, a real leader in each team that he's been in.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people forget that he was part of that 2021 side of Pacific. And he might have not been the flashiest player. And like you mentioned, he's not, that doesn't have the size or seniority of Didic, but he still was part of that team. And I think being part of that team obviously helped him a lot because he was able to learn from so many experienced players, from such quality players. And after Amir Didic left, last season or 2 seasons ago, he was the de facto leader for Pacific's defense, and I think he took it well. I think
Yeah.
even though they had trouble, offensively, he took that leadership, and he became that kind of voice in the back line. And yes, they got Ali and Dom to help out, but then he got a long-term injury, so it was back on him.
Yeah.
And he did really well. I don't think last season the issue was really Pacific's defense as much as it was our goal scoring, which continues to be an issue.
Yeah.
And now he moved to Halifax and has been arguably the best defender so far of the season
Yeah.
with them. It goes to show the talent that he has, the ability that he has as a defender, not just with the ball at his feet or when out of possession, but in terms of mentality, in terms of speaking, he's very loud. You can often hear him a lot on broadcast, especially if the crowd isn't super loud or if they have the mics on high. You can hear him a lot. So yeah, just a really, really, really good defender. Definitely one of the CPL mainstay defenders. And the fact that he's still only 27 as well, like he still has 2, 3, maybe 4 years, like peak years for him to continue into. So we might have not even seen the best of Thomas Merrigier, and yet he is already in the top 10 list. So really, really impressive career so far for TMG. 120 appearances I just picked he made for Pacific, and 13 so far for Halifax. And he's already got 3 goals in those 13.
Yeah.
Incredible from him. He's just getting stronger and stronger. So yeah, definitely great to see him in 9th position. Now, here's a really contentious one. And I think this is the one for 8th place that when people start sending me their lists, they're like, oh, I think I might have missed a few. I'm like, there's one name that I keep not seeing in people's lists. He was not out of 8. He was only in 3 people's lists.
Okay.
Out of 8, but he was still finished 8th overall because of how high the others rated him. So this is a very interesting one here. And I think it's a lot of it has to do with his recent form, and it's very understandable because you're talking about consistency. Yeah. In 8th place is Taran Campbell, the CPL leading goal scorer on 17 points. As I mentioned, only 3 people had him on the list, but 2 of them had him 4th, which was McCall and Brendan Q. Both had him 4th, so that gave him 14 points. And then he got the extra 3 points from yours truly. I put him in 8th position. Now, this is a very weird one because to only have 3 people have him on the list, the all-time leading goal scorer for the CPL, who's still active, is just a little bit mind-boggling to me. Now, I understand that his time with Vancouver so far and his run with Forge, especially, let's say his last 2-3 years, hasn't been anything special. He's really struggled with injuries and consistency, and he's been out of it. But his form alone from like 2020 to 2022, like those 2-3 years that he was with Pacific, to me, it's still incredible that he's still the leading CPL goal scorer, despite only really having that 2-3 year peak. That is why, for me, in terms of like peak, he's up there with one of the best peaks in the CPL. And I think that's why, personally, he should be in the top 10. But I'm curious for you, Mike, why didn't you have him in your top 10?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you mentioned there, obviously it's not going well at Vancouver. It tailed off badly with injury and form at Forge. And he's the opposite for sort of like the same reasons I didn't pick Salter, but just the complete opposite at the same time. Like Salter's improving and will get better, and then he'll be a mainstay in everyone's list. Taran Campbell was started off the league very well, and as the league's got better, he's been less effective in my eye. That's how I've seen him. So as the league's improved, he struggled more than he did in those opening seasons with Pacific. So for me, that's why I've left him out. Because if he had played for Pacific and instead of going to Forge had gone abroad, then maybe his legacy as a striker would have remained at that peak. Whereas now we've seen like a longer period of of him in the league where he's just not scoring goals. and yeah, so that's why for me he wasn't on there. But I mean, yeah, he is the leading goal scorer. You can't take away what he did at that time, with Pacific especially. So I can definitely see why people put him in, and yeah, it's sort of the personal preferences, I guess, for like looking at the list.
That's fair. What's incredible too is that it really was 2019, 2020 was the Island Games. We don't really count those. Really 2019 and 2021 where he made his mark. Because after 2021, he obviously moved to Forge.
Yeah.
But in just 2 seasons, he had 35 goal contributions across 69 games. That is incredible. That is a goal contribution just under every 2 games. Which at this level, right? Like that's a really good ratio for a striker. 25 goals, 10 assists. But then you look at his Forge career, and he had a decent, 2 seasons with Forge in 2022 and 2023. In 2023, he got 10 goals in 28 matches, actually, and 2 assists. So like that's a pretty decent season in the CPL, considering where you see like the golden boots. Usually a golden boot winner only gets like 10, 12 goals. So that's still quite good. But he only had 18 goals and 6 assists in 78 matches for Forge. So he actually played more matches for Forge, but obviously fell very short of his 25 and 10 that he did with Pacific. And then with Vancouver, only has a goal and 2 assists so far this season in 14 matches. And I can see how the recent form and his injuries
bias plays a bit in, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. Recency bias plays into it. But when you look at that 2019, 2021 and you combine them together, like he was by far and away the best striker in the league. He just was scoring goals left, right, and center. And so I'm a little hard done by not seeing him higher in the list. But I'm glad that some others agree with me. I mean, some others put him way higher than I did. So clearly some people are on the same wavelength as me. But that is probably the most contentious of the top 10 right there in Terran Campbell. Maybe in a few years with a little bit of nostalgia, we'll be able to look back and appreciate him a bit more, depending on how he finishes the season. But definitely a good quality player. Let's hope that he can find some form, especially Vancouver FC. They need that desperately this season. But now we're going to talk about 7th place, and that is a Forge player. Now, from here on out, from 7th to 1st, we're going to get mostly Forge, couple Cavalry, and, there's an Atletico player there as well. You can start thinking about what that might be. But we're obviously, because of how the league's been, because it's been dominated by Forge and Cavalry, a lot of the top players are obviously going to be from Forge and Cavalry, with only a sprinkle of other ones, as you can probably tell so far through the list. But in 7th place, we have, I think, one of the youngest players on the list right now in terms of the top 10. I think the youngest player in the top 10 right now, and that is Alessandro Hojabrpour, who finished in 7th place on 19 points. Now, I think this is the most that the player with the most places named in the list. So 2, 3, 4, 6 people had him in the list. I won't go through all of the points at this point because if not, I'm going to start yapping. But Scott Strasser, Brandon Q, Thomas Hewitt, Alex Gonge-Ruzic, yourself, and myself all had him in. The person with the highest was Thomas Hewitt, who had him in 3rd with 8 points. And then the lowest was yourself and Brandon, who had them in 10th, so only 1 point. I had him 7th, so he got 4 points. But on 19 points, you have Alessandro Hojabrpour. Now, again, part of that 2021 team, and he was a breakout star in that 2021 team. I think he was the one that won Young Player of the Year at the end of the 2021. Yes, he did. On Best in the 21 Canadian Player of the Year 2021. He did win that. So obviously a breakthrough star. Big kind of shock when himself and Terran Campbell immediately left Pacific and went to Forge. I remember that was like groundbreaking for the
Yeah.
league. Essentially, the top scorer and the best young player both just piecing out and going to the biggest rivals. But ever since, leaving Pacific, he's only gotten better and better and better. And what I think a lot of people don't understand about him is that he works so well in the system that
Mm,
Forge play that you almost don't notice him at times because there are more flashy attacking players in front of him. But when he is at the rock in that midfield, when he's at that 6
mm.
behind a Kyle Becker or a Borges or a Jensen or whoever you have it, he is just one of the most solid, consistent defensive midfielders in the league. He's so intelligent. He is gritty. He will fight. He will win back balls. He will throw in tackles, but on the ball as well. He's so intelligent. The passes that he plays doesn't pop up with too many goals, nor with too many assists, but just he is what sometimes keeps that team ticking. So I'm very happy that he's so high on the list because he's
Yeah.
a very solid player and has been since. I mean, he played 22 times in 2019. He is also another day oneer that's been
Mm.
around since the beginning of the league and is just being able to consistently perform at a good level and become the player that he is now.
Yeah, incredible. Like you say, it's his intelligence that sort of says it the most. Like when he's got the ball, like he doesn't give the ball away too often, but it's not like he's just playing the safest option every time. He does get things going. He provides the players in front of him the confidence to know that he's there. Should there be a turnover, and when he is defending, whether he either gets himself stuck in, but you can also read what other players are doing well and the interceptions he makes from just knowing what the other team are trying to do and trying to execute. He's there and he's getting in the way of it and just building attack straight away. So it's just a great player to watch.
Yeah, I'm very partial to defensive midfielders and central midfielders. That's the position I play. As a position I loved watching growing up. So for a player like Jabarpour, yeah, he's kind of the CPL's Sergio Busquets, I think, in the way that he plays. I know it's the high praise, but just for the CPL, I think he fits that mold quite well. But now let's talk about the 6th place. And now we have a cavalry player, a cavalry day one player who has been around, I mean, since day one, but has been performing at such a good level, such a talented player. And he actually is a fellow Colombian born like myself. It's Sergio Camargo on 28 points. So a jump now. Before we were jumping up by like 1 point, maybe 2 points. But now between Jabarpour in 7th and Camargo in 6th, we have a 9-point jump. And only 2 people didn't have him on the list, and that is Michael McCall and, of course, the Forge fan, Kevin Anderson. The person that had him the highest was myself, actually. I had him in 5th and he got 6 points. Scott Strasser, the Cavalry fan, actually only had him in 7th, so he only got 4 points. And then the lowest I lied, actually. Sorry. Brandon Q had him in 2nd, so he got 9 points. So Brandon held him in very high regard there. And I believe the lowest was 9th yourself. You put him in 9th with only 2 points. But I mean, Sergio Camargo, when he's on it, similar to some of the other players we're talking about, when he's on it, it can be one of the most influential players, most technical, talented players in the league, and he's shown that at times. I remember we were talking about Sergio Camargo at some point last season having a shout for Player of the Year because of the way that he was finishing with Cavalry. It's those kind of periods that he has that really cement him as like one of Cavalry's best and has been since 2019. He's been around. He's been one of Tommy Wilden Jr.'s generals since the very beginning, and very deserving to be in 6th place and be in this top 10 because he's a wonderful player to watch.
Yeah, he's busy. He's always trying to make something happen. It's not, you don't seem to watch him very often and just think he's not sort of trying to drive the team forward. He's there, like, and every time he gets the opportunity, he's just doing everything he can to get a goal scoring opportunity for himself or a teammate, and just a really fun player to watch. He's a class act.
Yeah. And I think the only thing with him is that sometimes consistency issues are a thing again. There are some players that are higher on the list that are more consistent than him, and is the reason why maybe he's a bit lower on this list. But 143 games for Calvary. What a number. 143 games. He's only 7 away from 150, and I'm sure Calvary will look to commemorate that. But in 143 games, 28 goals, 17 assists. The thing about him is, like you said, he's very busy, he's very talented, so he's not always put in his, I guess, favorite 10 position. Sometimes he's put a little bit deeper. Sometimes he's even put, out wide. He's played left wing, he's played right wing, he's played center forward at times as well. So he's kind of a multifaceted player, but yeah, it's such a talented player. And yeah, it's one of my favorite players to watch in the league. But now we're going to get to the top 5. Big 5 of the CPL. And pretty much for these ones, if almost everyone had these players on their lists, hence why they're in the top 5. Now, in 5th position is the big center back from Atletico Ottawa, Amir Didic. 35 points. Everyone bar Michael McCall had him in the list, which is confusing because I know that he really likes Amir Didic.
Yeah.
And everyone actually had him around the same place. Everyone had him between 5th, 6th, and 7th. So lowest place was Kevin Anderson in 7th. 4 people had him in 6th. 5 people had him in 6th. And 1 person, Thomas Hewitt, had him in 5th. So everybody kind of rated him as that kind of 5th, 6th, 7th player. But because everyone essentially rated him at that level, he got bumped up to be in 5th position. But I mean, he is arguably top 3 center backs in CPL history, I'd say. I think when you're looking at consistency, you could argue, obviously, Ashinori Jonsson isn't on this list because he's Swedish, but you could argue he's up there, even though he's more of a midfielder. Dan Klump, you could argue, is up there as well. Zator, you could argue, is up there as well. But I think for me, he's one of the clearest players to be, in this top 10 list in terms of defense. He is the highest ranking defender in the list. I'll give you that little tidbit right there. He is the best, highest ranked defender. And I think it's apt because he's just so good. It's very hard to beat him one-on-one. He's a towering player. He's very physical. He knows how to use his body. It's very difficult to try to get past him. When you're in the box and you're defending set pieces, there's no one better than him to defend set pieces. There's no one better than him to attack set pieces as well. He gets a bunch of goals from corners and wide free kicks. He's just a very, very talented player. He knows how to use his height to his advantage, but he's not just big and strong. He's intelligent too. His positioning in the way that he is, he's commanding. He organizes his back line. There's a reason why when he was with Pacific, they had one of the best defenses consistently in the league year after year after year. I mean, there's so much you can say about Amir Didic, just in the quality that he has. He's one of, like I mentioned, one of the top 3 center backs I think of all time in the CPL and deserves his place.
Yeah, definitely. And he's not the fastest or the most mobile because of his size, but he never looks rushed or panics. He gets his positioning done really well. You can, like you say, the strength of him just sometimes coming up with players, it looks like men against boys as he just sort of eases someone off with complete control who just has no way of dealing with him. Great defender.
Fantastic defender. And it's important to realize as well, he started out at FC Edmonton with the Eddies, who were consistently one of the worst teams in the league, and still kind of shown as a fantastic player. And obviously, when they disbanded, he had to find a new team. There's where he went to Pacific, and there's where he really stood out in his 2 seasons
Yeah.
with Pacific. And then since moving to Ottawa last season, he's just continued. Obviously, right now going through some injury issues and some injury troubles that have been keeping him out of the starting 11. Hopefully, we wish him a speedy recovery because, as you mentioned, he's just a really, really good player. Only 30 years old as well. So he still has at least a couple more years in him at this high level. Hopefully, he doesn't have any long-term issues with the injury that he's currently undergoing. But yeah, just a fantastic, fantastic center back, and yeah, worthy, as I mentioned, of the 5th place. Now we're going top four, and we have the only non forward / cavalry player in the top 5 right now. Or actually, I lied. Didic is there. So he's with Didic. He is the only non-cavalry forge player, and is another fellow Ottawa player. He's the little Argentine Canadian midfielder. It is, of course, Manny Aparicio on 46 points, so 11 points above Amir Didic. He is the first player that was on absolutely everyone's list. The highest ranked was tied between 2 players, or 2 people, which was Alex, who had him 3rd, giving him 8 points, and yourself, who had him 3rd and giving 8 points. I had him 4th on 7th. The lowest place was Scott Strasser, who had him in 10th, only giving him 1 point. But everybody had Manny Aparicio on this list. And I mean, just the player that he's been able to continuously be. I think now we're getting to a point where it's about just consistency and talent. And just like, because these 4 players have been so consistent in every season that they played in. They've been influential in essentially every season that they've played in, and they also obviously have a lot of accolades to back them. So we're getting to that upper echelon, and I think Manny Aparicio is obviously part of that club because he's just everywhere. He is the poster boy for Energizer Bunny, I think.
Yeah.
In the CPL, because he never stops running. He gives it all in that midfield. He gives energy when you don't think there's any energy left. He gets that kind of second win, and he has the talent and the intelligence to translate that into match winning moments. And I think that's one of the best things about Manny Aparicio is that it could be a dead game. He'll come in and he'll score a worldie or pick the players up, just lift the tempo and change the game. And I think that's what makes him such an exciting and influential player, because you always know as soon as he starts or gets subbed in, the game changes.
Yeah.
And that's why, he's one of my favorite players to watch.
Yeah, same. So much fun, so much energy. It's a tough one with Aparicio because you kind of wish you'd seen him make that step up to maybe MLS and see if he could have really taken a step up a few years ago and like become like a good player, a regular player in a higher league. But their loss is our gain. Really, we've been able to continue enjoying him for all this time, and it's that with that energy as well as the quality that just make him someone that anyone who's just watching football and enjoys football will love seeing when he's on the pitch.
Yeah, and you can see, when he was at Pacific weren't the same side when he wasn't in there.
No.
Ottawa, same thing. Even now, Ottawa are at the same side when he's in there. Just the energy that he brings to the team. He becomes that kind of heartbeat, or maybe not the heartbeat, the pace setter of the pacemaker of the team. Just really is such a impactful player. And even though he doesn't score, assist a bunch of goals, I mean, with Pacific, 78 games he played, 10 goals, 12 assists. So far with Ottawa, 47 games played, 6 goals, 6 assists. He's not scoring or assisting a bunch compared to maybe some other players that we're going to talk about. But it's the non-stat stuff that he brings the pressures that he brings, the
Mm.
ball wins, because that's the thing, is like he's not even just great in the attack defensively too. He's gritty. He will, fly into challenges. He'll win balls back. He'll
Yeah.
get so many recoveries in a match and be able to really put pressure on the opposition team, because you think that you're safe. You get the ball, you check your shoulder, he's already there from
Yeah.
out of nowhere and will push you to the ground essentially to win the ball back. He is, I think, a manager's dream in terms
Yeah.
of like a central midfielder player, kind of that box to box player, because he can do everything from his own box to the opposition's box, and is why he's one of the most consistent players in the league so far. So yeah, very happy to see him there. Obviously, everyone else agrees to varying degrees, but everyone else agrees that he should be in the top 10. Now we're getting to the podium of the list. Third, second, and first place. I think everyone can sort of agree that these three deserve to be here. I mean, first and second was essentially unanimous. It's funny because when you're talking about best players of all time in the world, there are two that pop up, especially if you're talking about recently.
Yeah.
The two names that pop up are obviously Messi and Ronaldo, and that's sort of unanimous.
Mm.
In this list, first and second are also unanimous. But before we get there, which is kind of funny, but before we get there, we have to talk about third place, because it is the other keeper, arguably the best keeper in
Oh.
CPL history. And it is Marco Carducci on 52 points, 6 more points than Manny Aparicio. Like I mentioned, everybody had him on the list.
Yeah.
Highest place was 3 people had him in third. 1 person had him in second, which was yourself. That was you. But the 3 people who had him in third was Michael McCall, Scott Strasser, obviously Cavalry fan, and myself. So we both rated him extremely, extremely highly. Lowest place was Brandon Q, who had him in 8th. But I mean, Marco Carducci, brilliant shot stopper. That's how that word goes. Shot stopper. But for me, what makes him so good is not just that he's a brilliant shot stopper, but that he's such a fantastic leader.
Mm.
I remember when I worked for Forge in the early years, I hated him as a Forge fan, because he would always give everything. He would deny goals. He would rile other players up. He would bleed for Cavalry. And in those rivalry matches, that's all that really mattered. And since then, I've been able to obviously look back with more fondness, now that I've taken out of that kind of bias heat. But just an absolutely fantastic player, another day one player for Cavalry. When you think, truthfully, when you think of Cavalry, I think he is the player that encapsulates them the best.
Yeah.
He should be the first player that you think of when that name is mentioned, just because of everything that he's given to that team and the fact that he's stuck around. And like I mentioned when we talked about Tristan Henry, he's leveled up every season as the quality has gotten better, to the point where he was one of the best keepers in 2019 and he's one of the best keepers now in 2025. Yeah. And I think that's what makes him such a brilliant player and a bronze medal worthy player.
He is Cavalry on the pitch. Like, this is the first person you think of. Leads us so well. Had the pleasure to interview him once. Is the nicest guy I've ever spoken to. But like, it's just someone that's part of, like, he is sort of CPL history already. And still, like, was he only 28? I think still. So we've got plenty more years of him leading Cavalry, leading them on the pitch. Him and Tommy have seemed to know exactly what they want and what they want their players to be doing in front of them. So it's just, absolutely class. And I'm sad he's only third.
Yeah, I mean, he 2-time Golden Glove winner. He's been runner-up twice as well in 2021 and 2023. He's always in and around those conversations of the best goalkeeper of the year. he had that battle with Tristan Hendry and Forge as who is the best goalkeeper. 2019, it was him. Tristan was 2020. 2021 was Jonathan Sirois for Valor, which is understandable. But then 2022 again, it was Carducci. 2023 was Tristan. So they both ended with 2.
Yeah.
I'm sure Carducci's wanted to get one more so he can be officially the best goalkeeper on accolades. But just like you mentioned, he is cavalry. I think it's Tommy Wilden Jr. and Marco Carducci. Those 2 are what encapsulate cavalry, and just a brilliant player. And I can understand you're a little sad to see him in third and maybe not a little bit higher. But I think when you hear second and first place, and I'll just mention them both, and then we can take time to speak about both of them, because they kind of go hand in hand, just in the legacy that they've had. And obviously they're 2 Forge players, and I think everyone can guess who they are. It's just about the ranking. So I'll tell you that in second place with 71 points, that's incredible, because again, the max that any one player can get is 80. That's it. Everyone puts him in first. He gets 80 on 71 points. So just shy of the 80, 9 points shy of the 80, is Tristan Borges from Forge FC. He is one of my favorite players in the CPL, has a special place in my heart because I saw him break through in front of my eyes when I worked at Forge. Just this incredible player. When he came out, he was 19. He was a kid when he broke through. He had so much energy. He was fearless. He was combative. He never backed down. He was super passionate. He was not ever afraid to try to beat a player, to shoot. Obviously a little bit raw, but for the talent that he had, for being so raw at 19, he was a whirlwind of a player for Forge and really set the league alight in that first seasons. The reason why after his first season at just 19, he was able to move to Belgium. And yes, it didn't really work out in Belgium all that well in the 2 seasons that he had there. Moved back to Forge, but it's like it never stopped for him. And he just continued to be such a good, consistent player. And we talked about peaks. He definitely had an early peak in 2019. But I think last season, winning player of the year, he had that second peak. And we talked about it when he won that award, and we were talking about award winners, but it definitely felt like that was the more completed Borges, that kind of version of him last season, where it wasn't just about him being the star and him trying to do everything of himself and putting the team on his back. He became more mature, and he understood his role. He understood his talent and what he was able to do. And yes, he's had an injury or 2, plaguing him per season that kind of take him out a little bit. But once he was able to get back to his best as he did last season, it showed everyone once again why he was the first big move abroad in the CPL when he went to OH Leuven in Belgium. And is just a brilliant player. And unfortunately for him, just overshadowed by, of course, the number 1 player, the best player, the best Canadian player of all time in the CPL. Who else but Mr. Captain Consistency himself, Kyle Becker. He finished on 77 points, 3 shy of the maximum. And it's not surprising that he's at that number 1 position whatsoever. Before I spiel about Becker as well, let's talk about Borges and everything that I just said, because I think he was the league's first breakthrough star. And it's just incredible the journey that he's been able to go on since then and still be in the CPL and still being able to perform at the level he has been able to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I echo everything you said about him there. Fantastic player, and this steps up in really big moments too. Olympicos and finals.
Didn't even mention that. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, there's moments. There's some players who look set to perform these personal bits of skill or little bits of quality that just define certain periods. And that Olympico and celebrating from the fans, you just saw how big a player he is in this league and how important he's been to Forge and all those years that he's played for them. He's an absolute class act.
Yeah. He has 167 matches for Forge. 167 matches. And he's only 26 years old. That's crazy. And in those 167 matches, 33 goals and 36 assists. That's crazy for a player that has played all across the midfield, really. He's played at left wing, where he kind of started, at right wing, then he kind of dropped back down into the attacking midfielder, center midfielder, that kind of 8 position that he's kind of evolved into. He's just been a standout player for Forge in their history. Definitely one of the legends, I'd say, for Forge and of the CPL. But even the stats don't fully kind of encompass everything that he's been able to do, the quality of goals that he has. I remember this crazy screamer that he scored for Forge against Cavalry in the first leg of the 2019 final. That was just this insanely good when he did that. A quick aside on a quick little tangent story on that. I was such a big fan of Tristan Borges at that point that I don't know if you were watching or if you remember, but Borges actually got a red card in that match while I was working it. And I was so angry because I didn't think it was a red and because he was basically my favorite player on the team. And I myself, I was like 19, 20 years old. I went on the walkie-talkie thinking that I was only talking to my boss because my boss was kind of chill. He was only like a year or two older than me.
Yeah.
And we sometimes say things through, like make some jokes, but very innocent jokes because it's still a work walkie-talkie. And it's, its channels can be heard from the people up top. I was so angry in that moment. I was so impassioned in that moment that I literally swore into the walkie-talkie saying, "What the F was that?" And my boss had to be like, "Remember, this is a public channel and a bunch of people can hear what you're saying." And I was mortified. I was like, I'm fired. It's over. I'm done. But apparently the people upstairs were dying of laughter because of that. And still a story that apparently they tell to this day. But yeah, Tristan Borges, fantastic, fantastic player. And the relationship that he's been able to have alongside Kyle Becker, I think is what has helped him reach that level. To have Becker as that kind of mentor as he was for him since his breakout has probably helped him, tenfold. And when we interviewed Tristan for the zine and I asked him about Becker, he was essentially lost for words. He's like, I can never have enough to describe how much that guy means to him, not just as a player, but as a friend and as a mentor. And I think that's one of the greatest things about Kyle Becker is that he came into this league in 2019 already being an experienced player. He came into this league at 28 or 29 years old. And the fact that he's 34, going to turn 35 this season, and is still playing to the level that he is, I mean, I don't think you can have a better spokesperson for the league than Kyle Becker, because he kind of encapsulates what the league was initially for, which was to bring players, Canadian players that kind of fallen through the cracks into a league where they can develop, where they can shine in ways that they might have not been able to before because they didn't, make it at an MLS club like Kyle Becker. He played 29 times for Toronto FC, but never really made it there, bounced around to Dallas and Montreal. But finally had the opportunity to come back home, or relatively near home. Oakville, Hamilton is not that big of a difference. Also, another reason why I love him. Oakville, that's my hometown too. And play the game that he loves so much and be that leader, be that star, be that kind of bar for every other player. And I truly think that's what he's been able to do, is he set the bar for, okay, what's the quality that every player kind of wants to reach? And it's Kyle Becker, because he might not be the most technically talented player on the ball, though I think in terms of passing, there are a few that that reach
Mm.
his level, but it's just the consistency, the intelligence, the leadership, the ability to basically take a game on and quiet it down or raise it up, and it's just like clockwork for him. Because we talked about it too, when Borges was injured, when Chouanier was injured, when a lot of the stars were injured for Forge, last season and 2 seasons ago, who stepped up to carry
Mm.
them to the final of the CPL and to keep them in first and second? It was Kyle Becker. Even
Yeah.
though he was much older than a lot of these players, he was the one that kept consistent. And you can hear so many stories about him. He's the first one to arrive at training. He's the last one to leave. He is so meticulous with his own body, with his training, and how he keeps up with himself. And it's that reason why he is where he is as the greatest CPL Canadian player of all time. It's just the adoration that he has for the game and the discipline that he has for the game, mixed with his leadership and his experience. He is for me the CPL as a player. It's him. He embodies everything that you want a player to be at this level, and in the Canadian Premier League. And I think that's why he is where he is in this list.
Yeah, definitely. I think not to rehash everything you said. I completely agree. A couple of bits that sort of mentioned for him, like you said, there was times when he was literally carrying them on his back. Like you're looking at Forge, you go, well, they can't finish. The players aren't playing great, but he was doing it, and he was still making sure that Forge got results. And like it wasn't that he was just trying to save face. They were still getting results, even when sort of maybe 6 or 7 players were putting in a good effort, and the rest were almost nowhere to be seen in some matches. I think it was a couple of years ago, wasn't it, when we were going mad about it, and we kept saying like he's getting older. Like you can't rely on him to do this forever, but he's kept up his quality. And another thing to mention is all those young players that have come through Forge, who have gone on, like Tristan Borges, have gone on to earn his move abroad, and obviously he's come back. But you look at Poku, look at Vasilis, all these players will learn so much from Carl Becker of what's expected, like the level that you'll train at, the level that you perform at, everything about being a professional. He would have been a big part of what they would have seen and what they would learn from, which again is such a big part of why this league's been. What's so great about this league, like with it, they want to find young players, they want to give them opportunities to grow, but you need these experienced players with quality that's going to help get them there. And yeah, he's been an absolute incredible player all this time, throughout the life of the CPL.
Yeah, and it's a no surprise that he's second in terms of appearances for the CPL with it says here 160. I think he might actually have more now. He's just behind Ashinori Janssen. He might have surpassed them. I don't think this is quite updated, but he's up there. He's first and second with most appearances. Carducci is just behind him as well. But the fact that he's been able to play, there's few times that I can remember. I can't even think of the top of my head times where he was unavailable for Forge.
No.
Because of injury. I don't think he really had many times where he wasn't playing, essentially like 1,800 minutes per season. Like he's just always there, and he's so consistent. And the fact that he's been able to raise these players and help them develop, Pasius, Poku, a bunch of other players to the level that they've been, it shows just the impressive nature of him. So, yeah, no surprise then for the list to finish off with Kyle Becker at the pinnacle, 77 points. That is our top 10 Canadian CPL players of all time list. 22 players, 19 positions. For those that are interested, we probably will be sharing the actual list so you can look through it. on our socials
Hmm.
so that you can compare and contrast. And if you have your top 10 list and you want to let us see it, please feel free to reach out and share with us, like I mentioned, at Coast to Coast FC for all of our socials. We will be back later this week to discuss the match week that just happened. A lot of talk about there.
Yeah.
A lot of good games from the rivalries. A lot of high stakes. So we definitely will chat about that in the weeks to come. But until next time, my name is Felipe and
And I'm Mike Rice.
and this has been Coast to Coast FC signing out.